Yet another exhausting day, I sighed as I kicked off my shoes and dropped my bag by the door. The aroma of Greg's famous spaghetti bolognese wafted from the kitchen, beckoning me. But before indulging, I had to check my email. I settled onto the couch, laptop in hand, scanning through the usual work updates and notifications. That's when an unfamiliar email from Greg's account caught my eye. Curiosity piqued. I opened it, only to be greeted by a fancy restaurant reservation. For two, my brow furrowed as I reread the details. This couldn't be right. Greg and I hadn't planned any special occasions. A sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach as doubts began to surface. "Greg?" I called out, my voice edged with tension. "Can you come here for a second?" Moments later, he emerged from the kitchen, that easy grin of his plastered across his face. "What's up, babe?" I studied him, searching for any tells, but his expression remained infuriatingly nonchalant. Wordlessly, I pivoted the laptop, the incriminating email on full display. Greg's features froze, just for an instant, before that familiar mask of innocence slipped back into place. "Oh, that? It's nothing, just a mix-up at work." "A mix-up?" I echoed, skepticism lacing my words. "For a romantic dinner reservation?" He shrugged, maintaining an air of indifference that grated on my every nerve. "You know how it is, the admin team gets things crossed sometimes." Every fiber of my being screamed that he was lying. But without proof, I knew pressing the issue would only lead to another circular argument, something we'd become all too familiar with lately. So I forced a tight smile and nodded. "If you say so." But even as we settled in for dinner, the lingering doubts gnawed at me. This wasn't just a simple mix-up. I could feel it in my bones. Greg was hiding something, and I intended to find out what. That night, I tossed and turned, Greg's deceit weighing heavily on my mind. As a social worker, I developed a keen sense for sniffing out lies. It came with the territory, and every instinct told me that my husband was hiding something big. The next morning, I decided to take matters into my own hands. While Greg was at work, I fired up my laptop and started digging. It didn't take long to locate his email account. We'd never been the type to hide passwords from each other, at least not until recently. I felt a pang of guilt as I scrolled through his inbox, but my conscience was quickly overshadowed by what I found, a lengthy email chain between Greg and someone saved only as GS. The contents made my blood run cold. Flirtatious banter, intimate details, and plans for secret rendezvous, all right there in black and white. My hands trembled as I copied the damning evidence onto a flash drive, knowing I needed to gather more proof. That's when I remembered the woman I'd seen Greg meeting a few weeks back. At the time, I'd brushed it off as a work contact, but now, I couldn't be so sure. With a renewed sense of determination, I grabbed my keys and headed out, tailing Greg from a discreet distance. I watched as he stopped at a quaint cafe, taking a seat at an intimate corner table. And then she arrived, a petite blonde with a dazzling smile that seemed all too familiar. My heart pounded in my ears as she leaned in, greeting Greg with an affectionate embrace. The way they held each other, the lingering glances, it was painfully intimate, like two lovers reuniting after a long absence. White-hot anger surged through my veins, followed swiftly by a bitter chill of betrayal. In that moment, I knew without a shadow of a doubt, my husband was having an affair. I wanted nothing more than to storm in and confront them both right then and there. But I knew that would only give Greg the upper hand, allowing him to twist the narrative as he so often did. No, I needed to play this smart, gather enough evidence to back him into a corner, leaving him nowhere to hide from the truth. Only then could I truly make him pay for his deceit. With a deep, steadying breath, I turned and headed back to my car, already formulating my next move. Greg had made a grave mistake in underestimating me, a mistake he would soon come to regret. A few days later, I found myself at a social workers networking event, the perfect opportunity to gather more intel on Greg's mystery woman. As I mingled with colleagues, a familiar face caught my eye. Mira Johnson, an old friend from college. "Marlena, I didn't know you'd be here," Mira exclaimed, pulling me into a warm embrace. Her eyes sparkled with genuine delight, a refreshing change from the fake smiles I'd grown accustomed to. "It's been too long," I replied with a smile, relaxing into the comforting familiarity of her presence. "We really need to catch up properly." Mira nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. Oh, you'll never guess who I ran into last week. My heart skipped a beat, wondering if fate was about to deliver the answers I'd been desperately seeking. Who? Gwendolyn Smith, she exclaimed. Remember her? That girl you two were always fighting over in our dorm days? The name hit me like a punch to the gut, the memories flooding back in an instant. Gwendolyn, the blonde bombshell who'd made our college years a living hell with her petty jealousies and relentless pursuit of any guy who caught her eye, including my then-boyfriend, Derek. Gwendolyn, I repeated, my tone laced with disdain. What's she been up to these days? Mira's expression shifted, her brow furrowing slightly. Well, that's the thing. She seemed really chummy with your husband, Greg. The words hung in the air like a lead weight, confirming my worst suspicions. It all made sense now. The secret emails, the hushed meetings, the lingering glances. Greg's mysterious woman was none other than my old nemesis, Gwendolyn Smith. That lying, cheating snake, I spat, my hands balling into fists at my sides. He's been carrying on an affair with her this whole time. Mira's eyes widened in shock, her mouth falling open. No way. Are you serious? Greg always seemed so devoted to you. I let out a humorless laugh, shaking my head bitterly. Apparently not. That bastard's been playing me for a fool. Anger and humiliation washed over me in waves, threatening to drown me in their intensity. But I couldn't let the emotion consume me. Not yet. I needed to stay focused, to gather enough evidence to nail them both to the wall. Mira, I need your help, I said, my voice low and urgent. Tell me everything you know about Gwendolyn and her history with Greg. To her credit, Mira didn't hesitate, launching into a detailed account of their apparent closeness and Gwendolyn's thinly veiled disdain for me. With each new revelation, the pieces fell into place, painting a picture of a calculated, long-simmering scheme for revenge. By the time Mira finished, my jaw was set in grim determination. Greg and his mistress had made a fatal mistake in underestimating me, and they were about to pay dearly for it. That evening, I confronted Greg the moment he walked through the door. We need to talk, I stated firmly, arms crossed over my chest. He barely batted an eye, shrugging off his jacket with a casual air that made my blood boil. Sure, what's up? Don't play dumb with me, I snapped, glaring at him. I know all about your little affair with Gwendolyn Smith. For a split second, Greg's mask slipped, his eyes widening ever so slightly, but he quickly recovered, letting out a dismissive scoff. Gwendolyn, are you serious right now? That's just crazy talk. Is it? I challenged, stepping closer until we were nearly nose to nose. Because I have proof, Greg, emails, eyewitness accounts, everything. His gaze hardened, jaw clenching. You've been spying on me? Real classy, Marlena. Don't you dare try to turn this around on me. I exploded, my voice rising with each word. You're the one carrying on an affair behind my back. Greg's expression darkened, an ugly sneer twisting his features. Maybe if you hadn't been so wrapped up in your precious career, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere for attention. The words hit me like a slap across the face, striking at the very insecurities he knew I harbored. For a moment I faltered, doubts creeping in, until I remembered the truth staring me in the face. Don't try to play the victim here, I spat, regaining my fire. This has nothing to do with me or my job. It's about you and your sick need for attention, no matter who you have to hurt in the process. Greg opened his mouth, likely to spew more venom, but I cut him off with a raised hand. Save it. I'm done listening to your lies. I stepped back, squaring my shoulders with renewed determination. From now on, I'll be fighting fire with fire. And when the smoke clears, you and your little mistress are going to wish you'd never crossed me. With that, I turned on my heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind me with a satisfying bang. I could feel the tide shifting, the paradigm between us irrevocably altered. Greg's betrayal had awakened a fury within me that wouldn't be sated until he paid the ultimate price. As I slid behind the wheel of my car, a plan began to take shape. If Greg wanted to play dirty, then so be it. But this time, I'd be holding all the cards. The first step? Gathering undeniable proof of his misdeeds, the kind that would leave no room for his usual manipulation tactics. I knew just where to plant a hidden camera to catch him in the act, red-handed. With a grim smile, I started the engine and peeled out of the driveway, my sights set on victory. Greg had made his bed, and now it was time for him to lie in it. Permanently. The hidden camera was a stroke of genius. I'll give myself that. Within days, I had all the proof I needed of Greg's sordid affair, captured in damning high definition. I watched in sickened silence as the footage played out, Greg and Gwendolyn tangled in a heated embrace, their bodies moving in a sickening rhythm. But it was the conversation that followed which truly sealed their fates. "We have to be more careful," Gwendolyn purred, running a perfectly manicured nail down Greg's bare chest. "Marlena's already getting suspicious." Greg let out a derisive snort. "Let her suspect all she wants. By the time she figures it out, it'll be too late." My grip tightened on the computer, knuckles straining white. Too late for what? As if reading my mind, Gwendolyn continued, "You're sure you can pull strings to get me that promotion over her? I'd hate for all this." She gestured between them with a salacious grin. "To be for nothing." "Consider it done," Greg replied with an arrogant smirk, pulling her closer. "Marlena's been living on borrowed time at that company. Once I tarnish her reputation, they'll have no choice but to overlook her for the job." White-hot fury blazed through me as the harsh reality crystallized. This wasn't just about broken vows. It was a calculated scheme to sabotage my career, my livelihood. To take everything I'd worked so hard to build and grind it into the dirt. In that moment, the floodgates burst open, unleashing a torrent of rage and betrayal unlike anything I'd ever felt. How could he? After everything we'd been through, everything I'd sacrificed to build this life with him? I wanted to scream, to hurl the laptop across the room until it shattered into a million pieces. But I couldn't, not yet. No, I needed to stay in control, to approach this strategically, like the clinical professional I was trained to be. Only then could I extract the revenge they so richly deserved. With a deep, steadying breath, I closed the laptop and began pacing, my mind already whirring with potential scenarios. I could take the evidence to the company, effectively torpedoing Greg's plans to undermine me. But that felt too impersonal, too corporate and detached. No, I needed a more visceral form of retribution. A public humiliation that would cut to the core of their arrogance and leave them disgraced, their reputations in tatters. A slow, wicked smile curved my lips as the perfect plan took shape. I would let them have their little dinner date, let them revel in their perceived victory, only to pull the rug out from under them in the most brutal, comprehensive way possible. Yes, Greg and Gwendolyn would get their comeuppance, all right, and by the time I was through with them, they'd be lucky if the ashes of their shattered lives were enough to fill a teacup. With a renewed sense of purpose, I began making arrangements, the gears of my meticulously crafted revenge already in motion. They wanted to play dirty? Fine by me. This was war, and I didn't intend to take any prisoners. The annual company gala was in full swing, a glittering affair filled with the city's social elite. Greg and Gwendolyn swept in like royalty, reveling in their perceived victory over me. Little did they know, I had a few surprises in store. As the evening progressed, I bided my time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Finally, as Gwendolyn took the stage to accept her undeserved promotion, I made my move. Before we proceed, I called out, my voice ringing clear across the hushed ballroom. All eyes turned towards me, but I kept my gaze locked on the stunned expressions of my traitorous husband and his mistress. "I'm afraid there's been a terrible mistake," I continued, striding forward with purpose. "You see, this promotion was meant for me until certain individuals conspired to undermine my reputation through lies and deceit." A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd as I produced the sleek remote control, thumbing the button to project the incriminating footage onto the massive screen behind me. Greg and Gwendolyn's illicit affair played out in lurid detail, their hushed conversation about sabotaging my career echoing through the suddenly silent room. "You see, ladies and gentlemen," I addressed the captive audience, "my husband thought he could have his cake and eat it too, carrying on an affair while plotting to destroy my professional life in the process." I fixed my glare on Greg, who had gone deathly pale. "Did you really think you could get away with it? That I'd just roll over and let you trample all over me?" Before he could respond, I rounded on Gwendolyn, who looked fit to faint. "And you were always jealous, weren't you? Petty and small, lashing out at anyone who dared outshine your fragile ego." With each biting word, I advanced on the pair until I stood mere feet away, reveling in their abject humiliation. "Well, no more," I declared, my voice hardening to steel. This is where your manipulation ends. Turning back to Greg, I let the weight of his betrayal crash over me one final time. You have a choice, Greg. Resign, effective immediately, or I take this evidence to the authorities and pursue charges for corporate sabotage, fraud, you name it. His mouth worked soundlessly, the arrogant bravado he usually cloaked himself in shredded to tattered remnants. Well? I pressed, quirking an expectant brow. What's it going to be? In that moment, it was as if all the fight, all the pompous disdain, drained out of him, leaving a hollowed husk in its wake. His shoulders slumped in defeat. I'll resign, he muttered, unable to meet my gaze. A hushed gasp rippled through the crowd as I allowed myself a grim smile of satisfaction. With those 3 words, the power had shifted irrevocably, and he knew it. As security led the disgraced pair away, the ballroom erupted in thunderous applause. Well-wishers and colleagues swarmed around me, offering congratulations and commendations for my integrity. But I brushed them all aside, focusing on a single thought: justice, finally served. And it tasted sweeter than I could have ever imagined. The gala's afterglow still lingered as the crowd thinned out, leaving only a smattering of revelers. I stood off to the side, savoring a well-earned glass of celebratory champagne. Marlena? The familiar voice made me turn to find my boss, Jonathan, regarding me with a mixture of awe and respect. I can't begin to express how impressed I am by the way you handled this situation. I offered him a gracious nod, the bitterness of Greg's betrayal finally starting to ebb. I only did what was necessary to protect the company's integrity. Jonathan shook his head firmly. It was more than that. It was an incredible show of character and resilience in the face of such underhanded tactics. His gaze turned solemn. I'm deeply sorry you had to endure such a violation of trust from someone you loved. The words hung heavy in the air, raw emotion welling up. But I swallowed it down, lifting my chin. Thank you. But that's all in the past now. I managed a small smile. I'm just glad the truth finally came to light. As are we all, Jonathan agreed with feeling, which is why I wanted you to be the first to know. The leadership position is yours if you'll accept it. You've more than proven your mettle. A surprised breath escaped me as the implication sank in. After everything, I was being rewarded with the very promotion that Snake Gwendolyn had schemed so ruthlessly to steal. Poetic justice, indeed. I thank you, Jonathan, I replied, equal parts humbled and elated. You can count on me to give my full dedication to this new role. A smattering of cheers and applause broke out as word spread, a small crowd gathering to offer their congratulations. I accepted them all with as much grace as I could muster, still reeling slightly from the whirlwind of the past 24 hours. Eventually, the well-wishers dispersed, leaving me alone with my thoughts. As my gaze swept over the opulent ballroom, now devoid of its glamorous trappings, a profound sense of closure washed over me. This chapter of my life, the one marred by Greg's poisonous deception, was officially closed, and a new one beckoned, brimming with hard-earned promise and the respect of my peers. Perhaps for the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed the tension to bleed from my shoulders, exhaling a deep, cleansing breath. Greg and his tawdry schemes held no power over me anymore. I was free. As for what lay ahead, only time would tell. But one thing was certain: I would greet it head-on, bolstered by an unshakable self-belief forged in the fires of sweet, well-deserved revenge. Yes, the future was looking brighter than ever, and I had every intention of basking in its warm, liberating glow. A few months later, I settled into the plush leather chair behind my new desk, surveying my freshly appointed office with a contented smile. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of settling into my hard-won leadership role, but the swirl of activity was an invigorating change of pace, one I welcomed with open arms. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my reverie. Come in. Mira poked her head in, beaming. Hey you, got a second? For you, always. I waved her inside. What's up? Oh, not much, she said airily, sliding into the chair across from me. Just thought I'd pop in and see how the big boss lady is adjusting to life at the top. I rolled my eyes good-naturedly. Please, it's not that grand. Just a new set of challenges, that's all. Uh-huh, and I'm sure you're tackling them all with your usual flair. Mira's expression turned serious. Honestly, Marlena, I'm really proud of you for how you handled that whole mess with Greg. You could have easily crumbled, but instead you rose up stronger than ever. My chest swelled with a mixture of pride and humility. Coming from someone like Mira, whose friendship and support had been utterly invaluable these past months, the words carried profound weight. "Thank you," I replied simply, holding her gaze. "I couldn't have done it without you, and the other amazing women in my life who had my back." Mira nodded, seemingly satisfied before that familiar mischievous glint returned to her eye. "So, now that you're all professional and important, does this mean you'll be too busy for us regular folk?" I barked out a laugh. "Get out of here with that. You know you're stuck with me." "Good," she grinned, "because I wouldn't have it any other way. We celebratory drinks tonight? My treat?" "You're on," I agreed with a smile, already feeling the burdens of the day melting away at the prospect of an evening of laughter and commiseration with my closest friend. As Mira excused herself, I leaned back in my chair, basking in the quiet satisfaction of a life and career finally back on track. Greg's betrayal still stung, that much was undeniable, but the ache had faded into a dull throb, easier to compartmentalize with each passing day. A faint buzzing from my computer caught my attention, a news alert with Greg's name in the headline. I clicked through, unsurprised to find it was another sordid account of his continued downward spiral in the aftermath of our very public, very messy split. Gwendolyn's name featured prominently as well, cementing her role as his partner in undoing. According to the reports, she'd relocated to someplace far away, her misguided ambition to take what wasn't hers, ultimately her own undoing. I exhaled a soft snort, shaking my head. Let them wallow in the squalor of their self-made misery. As for me, I was too busy thriving to spare them a second thought. A memo caught my eye, reminding me of the upcoming mentorship program orientation. I felt a swell of pride coursing through me. Nurturing the next generation, passing along the hard-won wisdom I'd accrued over the years. It was an honor and responsibility I didn't take lightly. Who knew? Maybe by paying it forward, I could help spare a few bright young minds from falling into the same traps I once had. If my own trials and tribulations could serve as a cautionary tale, a message of perseverance against all odds, then it would have all been worth it. Yes, this was the start of an incredible new chapter, I mused, energized by the possibilities that lay ahead. One forged through the flames of heartbreak and betrayal, certainly, but also one tempered by the resilience that had seen me through to the other side. And as I closed my eyes and drew a grounding breath, I silently vowed to conduct myself with the same integrity and purpose that had been my saving grace all along. No matter what storms may come, I would face them head-on and emerge victorious. This, I could finally say with conviction, was only the beginning.
My mother-in-law seems to dislike me. Should I ask for a refund on the house purchase I funded? Huh? My husband was perplexed, but when I revealed a certain fact, his attitude changed dramatically. Is that true? My name is Jamie, and I'm a 35-year-old remote worker. I've been married to Daniel for 3 years. We met during university. Not dating at the time. We started dating when we met again at a reunion of the club we belonged to. After about a year of dating, we decided to get married. Since I had been focused on work and had no dates, marrying him felt like a miracle. I truly believe he's the right partner. Our married life has been enjoyable, and even now, 3 years later, we feel happy. However, recently, a significant change occurred in that happiness. It started with my father-in-law's health issues. He is not yet in need of nursing care, but he has to make frequent visits to the hospital. My mother-in-law asked us to move in with her because she was worried about her old age and other things. Since I didn't have a negative impression of my in-laws, I didn't oppose when my husband brought up the idea of cohabitation. We've been married for 3 years now, and we've had our fair share of life as a couple. I thought it would be nice for my in-laws to live with our grandchild when we have one. When I agreed to living together, My husband was extremely pleased.
Thank you so much. Mom and Dad will definitely be thrilled.
For the sake of our in-laws, and seeing my husband happy, it was good. After that, we moved from our previous place to live with our in-laws. Dad, Mom, I look forward to being with you from today.
Likewise, nice to meet you.
I'm truly sorry for causing inconvenience because of me.
No, please, don't say that.
That's right. Supporting each other is what family does. Right? Thank you, both.
My father-in-law used to be active, always full of energy, enjoying outdoor activities like mountain climbing and fishing when he was in good health. So the current situation with his health issues affecting his legs and back is quite shocking for him. I felt the need to take care of his mental well-being. And thus, our cohabitation life began. At first, I thought things were going really well. Mom, I've prepared lunch.
Oh, thank you. That's a relief. Today, the hospital was quite crowded. I'm really hungry now.
My mother-in-law expressed gratitude when I did housework. My father-in-law did not yet need care, but he had to be accompanied to the hospital, and my mother-in-law was having a hard time, so I wanted to support her as much as I could. I work during the day, but as a remote worker, I can quickly respond to any situation. After finishing a certain amount of work, I went shopping, and I managed cleaning and laundry in between. That way, I tried to balance work and assist my mother-in-law to reduce her burden. However, around a month after the start of cohabitation, my mother-in-law's attitude began to change.
Jamie, why are you always playing in your room? What's your intention?
Huh? Playing?
Yes, you open your computer, do online shopping, and watch foreign dramas, don't you?
Well, I'm working.
Huh? Working? What nonsense are you spewing?
Daniel explained this to you, right? I work remotely.
I can't believe that, because you're always watching dramas. I can hear the sound coming from your room. You're playing, not working. I hate such lies. Were you playing while I was going through a hard time, accompanying my husband to the hospital? That's really awful.
No, you see,
I don't need excuses. Be more careful from now on.
My mother-in-law left the room in anger. I work as a translator and French language tutor. I primarily do translation work on the computer, and my French tutoring job involves online classes, also using a computer. Perhaps my mother-in-law is hearing my spoken French and misunderstanding it as dialogue from foreign dramas. Even with such a misunderstanding, it's troublesome. I immediately reported the incident to my husband. Hey, today your mom said this to me.
Huh? Really? Mom said that?
As I nodded, my husband was at a loss for words.
I'll go talk to Mom for a moment.
Then my husband went to his mother's room. Curious, I went near my mother-in-law's room. She seemed upset about something.
Why do I have to endure this anger?
Jamie is working. I explained that before, right?
What are you talking about? She's always just playing on the computer. You wouldn't know since you're not home during the day, but she's not working. Besides, it's impossible to be working without going out to an office.
In your time, it might be hard to understand. But nowadays, many people work remotely.
My mother-in-law seemed unable to comprehend this. Then, my father-in-law, who was in the room, spoke up.
Daniel and Jamie both say she's working. And she's helping with the housework. Isn't that appreciated? At least our life has become easier compared to before we lived together.
That may be true, but... Okay, fine. I won't blame her anymore.
My mother-in-law reluctantly agreed. Hopefully she'd be quieter now. After this, my mother-in-law didn't say anything particular to me. However, at the same time, she stopped showing any kindness.
Jamie, lunch? Oh, forget it. You must be busy with work, right?
No, I can take a lunch break and make it.
Oh, really? Can you freely interrupt work so easily? I find it suspicious. Well, if you say you're working, I have no choice but to believe it.
My mother-in-law kept making mean comments like this every day. However, since she didn't interfere with my work, I couldn't discuss it with my husband much. Constantly complaining to him wouldn't put him in a good mood, and it might seem like I was overreacting. So I decided to endure the slight teasing. From then on, despite all the complaints, I continued to work and do my chores properly. And then I realized that it had been a year since we started living together. My husband seemed quite busy with work, and recently he had been working overtime more. I did my best every day not to burden him. However, my mother-in-law's attitude remained unchanged. Moreover, taking advantage of me working hard for my husband, she started imposing various tasks on me. As a result, I ended up doing all the housework lately. All my mother-in-law does is accompany my father-in-law to the hospital, and that's only once a week, so it's pretty easy. Yet my mother-in-law keeps nagging and complaining about me.
Are you playing around today, or are you actually working? You're always staying at home and hardly ever going outside. Are you a shut-in? How about going out a bit? Should I ask you to go to my husband's hospital?
No, I have work to do.
Sure. Work, right? I understand. Working or just watching foreign dramas?
My mother-in-law continued to berate me as usual. It happens all the time when my husband and father-in-law are not around, and she makes other snide remarks about me.
When are you going to give birth to a child? When will I see my grandchild?
I've discussed it with my husband. Right now, it's a period where we're both focusing on our careers.
Work again? Our requests are never taken seriously. Huh. What do you really think of your parents? Daniel, you're surely being deceived by her.
Why did I have to hear such things? I was getting fed up with the constant bullying. Amidst all this, my husband and I achieved a certain goal. It was regarding our savings, and together we managed to accumulate enough money to buy a house. My husband and I had been planning to purchase a home for a long time, and finally seemed like we could make that dream a reality. However, there was one problem we faced during this time. It was about living with my in-laws. Considering the current situation, if we bought a house, my in-laws would also move into the new home. I wasn't fond of my mother-in-law, but my father-in-law was kind, and above all, I was concerned about his health. So it seemed reasonable to continue living together. But honestly, I didn't want to endure my mother-in-law's bullying any longer. When I thought about it, I came up with a certain idea. Hey, when we purchase the new house, I have a suggestion. How about making it a two-family home?
Huh? A two-family home?
Yeah, that way your mom and dad and we can all have our privacy, and each of us can have spacious rooms. I think it would be great.
Certainly makes sense. The current place is a bit cramped. Besides, I come home late, and I worry about waking up my parents.
See? That's why I think a two-family home would be better for our new place.
All right, let's do that.
I felt relieved that my husband agreed. When my husband discussed the idea of buying a new home with his parents, they were both pleased.
What an attractive idea. I'm so happy.
But is it really okay? Wouldn't a new home be something a couple would want to live in alone? Don't worry about that.
Exactly, dear. We're still living together now, so getting a new house won't change anything.
Oh, but I'm thinking of making the new house a two-family home.
Huh? Two-family? Why two-family? Living together as we do now is just fine, isn't it?
Well, my job is demanding and I come home late, so I want to be considerate of both sides. Besides, having a two-family home means we each have more space, and if we make your side barrier-free, it'll be much easier for you, Dad. When 4 adults live together, things tend to accumulate, and if, in the future, Dad needs a wheelchair or something, having limited space would be inconvenient. Also, though we don't have plans for it now, when we have kids, living separately might be safer. Little kids tend to run around a lot, you know?
This isn't cohabitation.
Well, isn't it fine? I think it's okay if Daniel and Jamie proceed as they wish.
Are you saying that too?
Daniel and Jamie are the ones looking to buy a house, and they're making it a two-family home so we can live nearby. You should be grateful for that alone.
Natalie reluctantly agreed after being told that by her husband. Well, it was clear she wasn't fully convinced, and when it came to buying the house, my in-laws offered to contribute, but we declined. It was a decision made by my husband and me. As a result, we decided not to take any money from my in-laws. From there, we continued with various plans for buying the house. My mother-in-law still didn't seem fully convinced, but even so, the idea of a new house made her happy and excited. Generally, her mood was better, so the usual teasing towards me seemed lighter. After a few months, the day to move into our renovated new home finally arrived. The new house after the renovation was so magnificent that we were excited at first sight. Wow, amazing!
So this is our new home.
It was worth diligently saving money, right?
Yeah, indeed.
Well, it's splendid.
At my age, to be able to live in such a beautiful house again, this is truly appreciated. Thank you both.
My father-in-law expressed his gratitude happily to us. Thank you, Daniel. It's fantastic. My mother-in-law thanked only my husband, which bothered me a little bit, but I decided to assume that she only mentioned my husband's name because he was her son. From there, we each began living in our new homes. The new home was incredibly comfortable. With just the two of us, there was plenty of space, and most importantly, there were many moments without my mother-in-law, making life more relaxed. I could focus on work. That's what I thought, but within a week of starting our new life, my mother-in-law began trying to visit our house repeatedly. The doorbell rings repeatedly. She knows I'm home because I've mentioned working from home. Despite that, she persistently rings the doorbell. Under such circumstances, I can't concentrate on work. So I reluctantly have to open the door and let my mother-in-law in. She walks around our house, and,
"So this is what it looks like,"
she says, starting an impromptu room tour. And then she proceeds to offer me snacks and coffee and turns on the TV without asking. Mom? What are you doing?
"Oh, don't mind me. I'm just relaxing, so feel free to do your work."
No, if you want to relax, wouldn't it be better to do it in your own home?
Huh? What? Are you, as a daughter-in-law, trying to give me orders? I was against living separately to begin with. You probably wanted to have a separate house, right? You're such a terrible woman, avoiding me.
But, is it okay to leave Dad alone?
He's fine. Even if something happens, I can reach him from this distance.
Well, leaving him alone?
Then if you're so concerned, why don't you stay over there with him?
Huh? Wait, that feels a bit different.
Then don't interfere.
My mother-in-law said that, and forcefully stayed. And then she even went to my father-in-law's place to make lunch, and then she came back here to relax. While I was working, I couldn't concentrate because my mother-in-law was loudly watching TV. Mom, could you lower the volume a bit?
Shut up! Don't talk to me. I'm at a good part right now.
You're the loud one. And my mother-in-law once forced me to accompany my father-in-law to the hospital because she had her own business to attend to. Originally, I had a French teaching class scheduled, but I had to apologize to the students and reschedule, filling in for my mother-in-law at the hospital. My father-in-law apologized repeatedly and treated me to lunch as an apology. My father-in-law is on my side because he believes I am doing my job properly. Apparently, my mother-in-law doesn't like that either, so she treats me harshly. Her attitude towards me has become even harsher since we moved to the new house, so I've reached the point where I can't bear it anymore. One day I called my husband to the living room saying I had something to talk about.
What's wrong? Why the serious tone?
It seems your mom doesn't like me, so I'm thinking about asking for a refund of the money I contributed to buying the house.
Huh?
My husband was puzzled. Well, you would be surprised to hear such a thing out of the blue, but when I told him a certain fact, his attitude suddenly changed.
Is that true?
Your mom has been disturbing me while working at home, and it's been affecting my concentration. Then I talked about how his mother pressured me about having grandchildren and insulted me, suggesting I might be infertile. Gradually, my husband's face turned red, and he headed to his parents' side of the house. I followed him out of the house.
What's suddenly going on?
Mom, cut it out. I heard it from Jamie. You've been coming to this house during the day, disturbing her work.
I'm not doing such a thing.
Mom, don't play innocent. I have security cameras installed in my house.
Huh?
I was worried that something might be stolen, so I have footage of you relaxing in our house all the time.
That's...
When I said that, my mother-in-law looked surprised.
Weren't you always saying that you go for a walk for your health? Also having tea with neighbors. So all this time you are going to Jamie's place and disturbing her work?
Well, that is...
Cornered, my mother-in-law finally spoke her mind.
Because I didn't like it. What's with this working from home thing? You always look so comfortable that you don't look like you're really working.
I see. So Mom, you were jealous.
But even if you say your working is just pocket money, I could earn that much with a part-time job.
Then try earning as much as Jamie does. She earns more than I do.
What? Don't you work for a major company? Is that really true?
I work as a translator and a French tutor. Thankfully, I get jobs from various clients for both, so I earn about $5,000 a month.
No way! That's a lie, right?
It's not a lie. Jamie covered half of the house purchase cost.
What?
Seems like you looked down on Jamie quite a bit, and you lied to me, deliberately causing trouble. I can't forgive someone like that. We're getting a divorce.
Wait! Why does it have to end in a divorce?
We talked about this before. When you begged me not to divorce you after your affair in the past, you promised not to hurt or betray me again. If you disillusion me again, we'll definitely divorce. What's that? This is the first I'm hearing of. Sorry. I thought it wasn't something I should talk about, so I kept quiet. At that time, you were still in high school, and it was a sensitive period for you. I see. I mean, my mom is the worst. She had an affair, and then she went on to bully my wife. There's no redemption. We're cutting ties with her.
What? If even you abandon me, where should I go?
You reap what you sow. Live on your own.
Shockingly, my mother-in-law was handed divorce papers by my father-in-law and kicked out of the house. Afterwards, she managed to move to a cheap, shabby apartment, working part-time to sustain her modest lifestyle. On the other hand, with my mother-in-law gone, I've been able to live in peace. I regularly check on my father-in-law, and when my husband comes home early, we invite him over for dinner. Then, 6 months later, it was revealed that I was pregnant. Now, my husband, father-in-law, and I eagerly anticipate the arrival of our soon-to-be-born child, enjoying these happy days together. And now, it's time for the bride and groom to cut the cake, announced the MC. As I reached to hold the knife with my husband, someone grabbed my head from behind and smashed my face into the cake.
What?
I couldn't breathe with my face and upper body submerged in cream and sponge cake. Confused and struggling to get up, I ended up falling on my butt. My face and my pure white wedding dress were completely covered in cake. The banquet hall erupted into murmurs. I looked at my husband, and he was just stunned. Then someone called out to me.
How unsightful. This is what happens when you don't listen to my advice.
Standing there was a plump woman I had never seen before. Her face lit up with joy. Excuse me?
He's mine. How dare you have a wedding so nonchalantly?
Was she a guest? She was dressed formally, albeit huffing with anger. My groom, Nicholas, seemed to ponder for a moment before letting out a dry laugh and saying,
"A face full of cake. It's just a joke. Laugh it off, will ya?"
At that moment, I completely lost it. A woman ruining my once-in-a-lifetime wedding by smashing my face into a cake. And my husband trying to pass it off as a joke. I won't forgive them. I'll show them. The wedding venue soon turned into a scene from hell. My name is Diana, 27 years old. Let me tell you about the major event that befell me, starting from my upbringing. I was born the only child to a company president father and a former model mother. I think it's fair to say I was born into a privileged family. My father was kind but strict, insisting that I needed to be able to survive on my own. So, he made sure I focused on my studies. Thanks to my hard work from a young age, I got into a prestigious university and landed a job at a major corporation. I grew up to look just like my mother in her youth. People often said I should be a model, but I had no interest in that kind of work. A few years into my professional life, I faced some snide remarks about my looks initially, but worked hard not to be outdone by them. Eventually, I started to be recognized for my capabilities at work. I was beginning to feel a real sense of accomplishment in my work. But I didn't have a single boyfriend from my early 20s until I was 26. My friends would chuckle and say, "Diana, you seem like you're out of reach for most men. You seem normal once we talk to you, but maybe you're too intimidating for them. You don't show any vulnerabilities." However, I wasn't someone who prioritized romance, so not having a boyfriend didn't bother me much. I wasn't against the idea of marriage, but I was in no rush. That's how I felt. Meanwhile, my parents seemed anxious about me not having a boyfriend.
"Diana, you're beautiful, so you should get married to a good man before you get any older,"
my mother said with concern. I replied, "Mom, I want to marry someone who appreciates me for who I am. Plus, I'm busy with work right now." During this conversation, my father chimed in.
"How about this, Diana? Want to meet a man I can introduce you to?"
"An introduction by you, Dad?"
"Yes. There's a young salesman who frequents our company who seems promising."
"If you say so, Dad, I'll meet him." And that's how I was introduced to Nicholas, who will later become my fiancé.
"Wow, you're so beautiful. It's so very nice to meet you,"
he said with a friendly smile as soon as we met. He had the bright and cheerful demeanor of a salesman. He always carried himself with confidence, a typical good-looking and pleasant young man. He approached me boldly, not intimidated at all. He was well-educated, worked at a reputable company, and seemed to have a good character. I found myself increasingly drawn to him and started dating him. We were praised as a handsome couple, and I was quite pleased with it. My parents warmly supported our relationship, especially my father, who was very happy about it. Nicholas took charge in planning our dates and would surprise me with gifts on ordinary days, thoroughly doting on me. I was aware of his slightly cheeky side, but it was overshadowed by his many good qualities. I gradually came to cherish him deeply. On my birthday, after a year and a half of dating, he reserved a high-end restaurant. At the end of the meal, he nervously took out a small box.
Diana, I can't imagine life without you. Will you marry me?
Nicholas, thank you. Of course I'll marry you. As I gazed at the ring in awe, he tenderly hugged me. At that moment, I felt the happiest I've ever been in my life. Next, we went to meet his parents. They warmly welcomed me into their home.
My, what a beautiful young lady. Are you really going to marry our Nicholas? Of course. We're all for the marriage. Nicholas, take good care of Diana.
On our way back, Nicholas said to me,
My parents are usually pretty strict with me, but they were really kind to you, Diana.
Really? Your parents didn't seem that way to me.
You think so? They were pretty tough on me when I was young. But I'm glad they like you, Diana. It makes sense, given how beautiful you are.
Stop it. You're making me blush. A week after this conversation, it was time to introduce him to my parents. They were, of course, overjoyed.
Diana, I was worried you were clueless about love, but you finally met your prince,
my mother said, her eyes brimming with tears. My father added,
Nicholas, if you marry Diana, I might even consider entrusting the company to you in the future. Really? Yes, I've heard you're competent at work, and I have high hopes for a promising young man like you.
Surrounded by blessings and expectations for our future, our wedding was set. We decided to live together after the ceremony and began preparing for it. When we visited a newly built wedding venue, a wedding planner named Barbara greeted us.
Diana and Nicholas, you're the perfect couple we've been looking for. We'll offer a substantial discount on the wedding cost if you agree to be our showcase couple.
A showcase couple?
Yes, we'd like to use your photos and videos for our company's PR. We'll provide the dress and jewelry as part of a sponsorship.
How does that sound?
It's an offer we can't refuse. Let's do it, Diana,
he said, and I nodded in agreement. So, we decided to have our wedding as a showcase couple. Although we were engaged, he and I continued living separately, occasionally going on dates as before. He was often unreachable due to his busy work schedule, but I didn't mind too much. Time passed, and a week before the wedding, I noticed an anonymous letter in my mailbox. I opened it, feeling suspicious, and was shocked by its contents. A week later, there I was at the wedding venue, dressed in my wedding gown.
Diana, you look stunning as expected,
Barbara, the wedding planner, said cheerfully as she placed a sparkling piece of jewelry around my neck. Then the wedding ceremony began. Nicholas and I exchanged vows and rings in the chapel, watched by many. Friends, relatives, and colleagues from both our workplaces, including my father's company and Nicholas's company, gathered at the venue. There must have been over 200 people in attendance. Nicholas's boss led the toast, and the reception began. Our friends and colleagues came up to us one by one saying,
You look so beautiful. Congratulations.
Then came the time for one of the highlights of the reception, the cake cutting. The moment for the cake cutting and the first bite, where we would feed each other cake, was upon us, and a crowd gathered around us to capture the moment. A luxurious 3-tiered wedding cake, crafted by an artisan for our special day, was brought in.
Now, it's time for the bride and groom to cut the cake,
the MC announced, as Nicholas and I held the knife, ready to make the first cut. Someone grabbed my head from behind and smashed my face into the cake.
What?
I couldn't breathe, my face and upper body buried in cream and sponge cake. Confused and struggling to get up, I ended up falling on my butt. My face and my pure white wedding dress were completely covered in cake, and the banquet hall was filled with murmurs. Looking at my husband, he was just as stunned. Then someone yelled at me.
How unsightful. This is what happens when you don't listen to my advice.
There stood a plump woman I had never seen before, her face glowing with joy.
Nicholas belongs to me. How dare you have a wedding so nonchalantly?
Was she a guest?
A face full of cake? It's just a joke. Laugh it off, will ya?
At that moment, I completely lost it. A woman ruining my once-in-a-lifetime wedding by smashing my face into a cake, and my husband trying to pass it off as a joke. I won't forgive them. I'll show them. Just as I was about to speak up, my mother's voice filled the wedding hall.
Stop this nonsense.
She rushed over, helped me up, and glared at the woman.
What is this all about, Nicholas? Explain yourself right now.
The woman talking over my mother shouted,
Shut up, old lady. It's all this woman's fault. I did nothing wrong.
A colleague of Nicholas's quickly restrained the woman, who seemed to be trying to attack me.
Calm down, Sonia.
She glared at me fiercely. After wiping my face with a handkerchief my mother handed me, I finally spoke. Nicholas, who is this woman? What's your relationship with her?
Sonia is a junior colleague at my company,
he replied, his eyes clearly avoiding mine. I whispered to my mother to bring my bag from the dressing room. Oh, a junior colleague, huh? Why would just a colleague do something like this?
Well, that's because...
He began, but Sonia interrupted him, shouting,
Nicholas and I are in love. You have no right to be here.
Well, you heard her.
No, that's not true. She's my stalker. She's been claiming we're in a relationship and following me around. It's been a real nuisance.
He shouted, pointing at Sonia.
What? What are you saying? We truly love each other.
Enough! Shut up. Security, please escort her out.
At that moment, my mother returned. I took out a photograph from the bag she handed me and held it up. Then, what's this? It was a photo of Nicholas, sleeping in a hotel bed, clearly taken by a woman.
What is this?
Nicholas, along with all the guests, turned pale at the sight. I explained to everyone. This was sent to me anonymously a week ago along with a letter. Shall I read the letter? Don't marry Nicholas. He belongs to me. Back off. Sonia, you sent this, right?
Yes, that's right. You ignored my warnings.
He then panicked.
Diana, you knew? Then why?
I couldn't cancel the wedding just a week before. The guests were already invited. Besides, this wedding has special circumstances, remember?
Special circumstances? What are you talking about?
Sonia asked, confused. The wedding planner, Barbara, intervened. This wedding was part of a showcase project. We were going to use the footage for the venue's PR, with everything from attire to the planning sponsored by various companies.
What? A showcase? Sponsored?
She still didn't understand, and Barbara finally snapped. Do you have any idea how many companies and staff were involved for this day? You've ruined it all, so be prepared for the consequences. Do you know how much this is going to cost in damages?
Damages?
Then, a man removed the jewelry from my neck, saying,
This jewelry was loaned to us by our company. It seems to have been scratched during the commotion earlier. It's worth $100,000, and now it's damaged.
What? $100,000?
Of course. You'll be compensating for this, right?
Sonia turned pale and dashed towards the exit, but was quickly restrained by security. I watched this, then turned to Nicholas. Now it's your turn. You're ready to face the consequences, right?
Diana, I did have an affair, but it was just a moment of weakness.
He stood there, his face white as a sheet. Why would you cheat on me with someone like that?
Well, Diana, you're beautiful and perfect. It's like eating gourmet meals every day and suddenly wanting a hamburger. It was something like that.
What? Before I could raise my voice further, my father stepped forward in front of Nicholas.
You scoundrel! How dare you do this to my daughter?
My father, with bloodshot eyes, grabbed Nicholas by the collar and glared at him.
Sir, you have no right to call me sir. I'm severing all business ties with your company. I never want to see your face again.
A chorus of gasps came from Nicholas's colleagues. It seemed that my father's company has significant dealings with Nicholas's, so their reaction was expected. Nicholas, thrown to the ground by my father, was then punched squarely on the head by his own father.
Dad, what are you doing? Shut up. Apologize to Diana and everyone else now.
Trembling at his father's voice, Nicholas knelt down, pleading for forgiveness.
Diana, please, forgive me. I'll break it off with that woman and promise to be a good husband.
That's when I threw the cream-covered handkerchief at him. How dare you? I will never forgive you. Our engagement is obviously over. Prepare for hell. With my mother by my side, I left the venue, and my father announced the cancellation of the wedding. Later, Nicholas and I broke off our engagement, and I received $30,000 in damages for his infidelity. Nicholas was, of course, responsible for paying the ruined wedding expenses. The venue pressed charges against Sonia and sought compensation for the damages, including the costs of the staff specially arranged for the dress and jewelry. Nicholas and Sonia were both demoted at their company and eventually resigned, unable to endure the scornful looks. Sonia ended up in significant debt, and Nicholas was disowned by his parents. I don't know what became of them, but they're likely living a miserable life. As for me, I managed to recover, thanks to the encouragement of my parents and kind colleagues and friends. A year after that hellish wedding, a male colleague who had always liked me confessed his feelings, and now we are dating. I'm determined to learn from this experience and live a life full of effort until I find true happiness someday. On the day of my father's funeral, I called my husband, who hadn't shown up. As soon as he answered, he yelled at me.
What are you doing? Did you forget what day it is today?
Huh? What day is it? I'm at my father's funeral. What about you? What are you doing?
Funeral? Did you forget? Today is my mom's birthday. Hurry up, buy some premium champagne, and come home.
Frustrated by my husband prioritizing his mother over my father's funeral, I reached my limit. Despite boiling anger, I took a deep breath to calm down. I turned on the speakerphone on my smartphone to let everyone hear our conversation with my husband. My name is Emma. I lost my mother a few years ago and now live with my father. I met Oliver through a friend at that time. He, unlike me, lost his father a few years ago and lives with his mother. With such common ground, Oliver and I quickly became close. He always reserved lovely restaurants for our dates and took care of me perfectly. I was increasingly drawn to dependable Oliver. On one of our dates, he proposed at an upscale French restaurant. Delighted, I agreed to marry him, and we set up a new home close to his mother's place. I was excited about this newlywed life. However, it was far from what I had envisioned. Despite being newlyweds, Oliver wanted to go to his mother's home every weekend and showed no interest in spending time alone as a couple. Moreover, Oliver and his mother had an unusually close relationship. One day, when we returned to his mother's house, something happened.
Mom, I'm home.
Oliver, I've been waiting. Did you work hard this week?
Yeah, exhausted. I missed your cooking, Mom.
Well, Oliver, it seems you can only feel energetic with my cooking.
Oliver's mother fusses over him like a child, and he seems genuinely pleased. The two behave as if I'm not even there. Trying to join the conversation, I head to the kitchen to help Oliver's mother. As I search for a topic, I notice the dressing on the table. Oh, this dressing is the same as the one Oliver and I saw at the restaurant where we had our first date. What a coincidence. Then, Oliver's mother looks slightly proud.
That restaurant was good, wasn't it? If you're targeting a girl, invite her here. I chose it.
Huh?
That restaurant is close to a cafe, and the route to see the night view after the cafe is perfect. Well, it may not match the upscale French restaurant where he proposed, but it added a special touch to the proposal, don't you think?
Wait, did you plan all the dates he took me on? My mother-in-law puffed up her nose with pride.
Yes, exactly. Wasn't it the best date plan? I'm not particularly fond of you, but if it's what Oliver wants, I'll cooperate.
As I was shocked by my mother-in-law's words, Oliver appeared in the kitchen.
Mom, are you still here? I'm starving.
Oh, sorry about that. I was telling Emma about the restaurant I told you about.
Even though the secret is out that his mother planned all our dates, Oliver remains unfazed and smiles at his mother.
Really, Mom? Your choice of restaurants is always spot on. I can trust you, without a doubt.
You have a demanding job, so you don't want to waste time choosing restaurants for dates.
Naturally, he stayed at his mother's home that day. In the end, Oliver and I returned home late on Sunday night. Once home, I voiced my dissatisfaction to Oliver. During weekdays, you're busy with work, so we can't talk leisurely, right? That's why I want some quality time as a couple on weekends. Then Oliver responded somewhat displeased.
Huh? Are you saying you don't want to go to my mom's place?
It's not that, but going there every week might be a bit much, don't you think?
I left home, so my mom is all alone. I thought you'd feel uneasy living together, so I gave up on that. Are you reluctant to even visit? I didn't think you were so cold.
If you say that, it's also difficult for me to leave my father alone every week.
You're married now, so you shouldn't frequently go back to your parents' house. There's a difference between you and me.
No matter how much I tried to convey, Oliver didn't understand, and the discussion remained at an impasse. One day, while spending every weekend at my in-laws' house, without being able to do anything, I received an unusual message from my father. To his surprise, a tumor was found during a physical examination, and he was hospitalized. I immediately informed Oliver about it. Hey, Dad has been diagnosed with a tumor, and he'll be hospitalized. I want to accompany him, so I'll be going to the hospital this weekend. Upon hearing this, my husband's mood instantly soured.
We had plans to go to my mom's place this weekend.
Even if you say that, the situation is what it is, so there's nothing we can do.
Fine. Then, I'll go to my mother's house alone this weekend. In return, make sure you prepare for my mom's birthday party next month.
Without showing any concern for my father, Oliver headed to his in-laws' house alone for the weekend. When I saw my father after a long time, he seemed somehow thinner and smaller.
Emma, I'm sorry.
What are you saying? We're a family of only 2, so lean on me at times like this. After hearing detailed information from the attending doctor, it turned out that my father's tumor was malignant and quite advanced. I encouraged my father every day at the hospital. However, a few days later, his condition deteriorated rapidly, and he passed away quietly. I left a voicemail for Oliver, who was at work, and without much time to grieve, I hurriedly prepared for the funeral. After dealing with the funeral home and contacting those who had helped, I finally returned home close to midnight. Since I couldn't manage household chores while taking care of my father, Oliver had been regularly visiting his mother's house. I had hoped that he would come home to comfort me, at least during these difficult times, but Oliver was nowhere to be found. I sent the details of the funeral to my husband via text and went to sleep. Even on the day of the funeral, there was no contact from Oliver, and he did not appear. On the other hand, with many responsibilities as the only family member, I had no room to worry about my husband. Eventually, by the time attendees started arriving, there was still no sign of Oliver. At that moment, one of the attendees approached me.
Emma, it's been a while.
Kent, thank you for your continued support. I appreciate you coming all this way today. Kent is an old friend of my father's.
Well, I'm truly sorry about your dad. Since I'm here, I'd like to greet Oliver, your husband.
I tried to contact Oliver, looking at my phone. To my surprise, there was an aggressive call from him. I'm sorry, my husband hasn't arrived yet. I'll make a quick call. There might be something wrong. Apologizing to Kent, I hurriedly made the call, and Oliver answered, yelling at me.
What the hell are you doing? Did you forget what day it is today?
Huh? What day is it? It's my father's funeral, so I'm already at the funeral home. What on earth are you doing, Oliver?
Funeral? Did you forget today is my mom's birthday? Hurry up, buy a fancy champagne and come home.
Frustrated by my husband's prioritizing his mother over my father's funeral, I reached my limit. Despite the boiling anger, I took a deep breath to calm down. Then, I turned on the speaker of my phone, connected to Oliver, so everyone could hear our conversation. Oliver's voice echoed around.
Hey, are you listening? How about saying something?
Kent, in front of me, widened his eyes at Oliver's voice. Other attendees gathered, sensing something was wrong. With the speaker on, I responded to Oliver. I'm sorry. I don't quite understand what you're saying. What exactly do you want from me?
I already told you earlier. I said, buy a high-class champagne for my mom's birthday party.
That's impossible. You do realize today is my father's funeral, don't you?
So what? Today is my mom's once-a-year birthday. Who cares about someone who's not even in this world anymore? Take care of my living mom instead.
A special day. I can't think of anything more important than my father's funeral. Can you?
What? You're already married to this family. Do you really think you're allowed to put your own family first? Like that?
The attendees were stunned by Oliver's words. I fell silent and he continued, to curse at me.
To begin with, I hated that you went to the hospital to take care of your father. Even though I let you go to the hospital with the promise of properly preparing for my mom's birthday, you're such an ungrateful person.
If it weren't for the timing, I would have properly prepared for your mother's birthday party too. But right after my father passed away, I can't possibly celebrate. Oliver let out a heavy sigh on the phone.
Your old man dying right before my mom's birthday is such a hassle. Ugh. Enough already. Talking to you won't get us anywhere. I was a fool to rely on you. Today, my mom and I will celebrate her birthday. Just the two of us.
Saying that, Oliver unilaterally hung up the phone. I immediately turned to Kent. I'm sorry. It seems my husband won't be coming after all.
I see. Emma, you must be going through a lot. If you encounter any problems, feel free to consult with me.
Kent kindly offered words of comfort to me. The attendees also directed sympathetic looks my way. After greeting Kent and the attendees, I returned to the funeral preparations, successfully concluding the funeral without any hitches. Exhausted upon returning home, my husband was still absent. I made up my mind to completely sever ties with Oliver and went to sleep. The next night, when Oliver returned home, he was clearly irritated.
Hey, I'm back. Aren't you going to greet your husband?
As irritating as it was to even talk to him, I couldn't help but ask due to his unusual behavior. What's going on? Why are you so frustrated? Oliver complained to me, looking annoyed.
Nothing's going on. I got suddenly transferred from sales to warehouse duty today.
Ah, about that. Without showing any surprise, I responded, earning a skeptical look from my husband.
What's with that? You're talking like you knew it would happen.
Well, I did. But I didn't expect the results to come out this quickly. My words left Oliver wide-eyed.
Did you do something? No way someone like you can interfere with the personnel decisions of a big company like ours.
I wasn't the one who proposed it.
Then, who the hell interfered?
Kent did.
Kent? Who's that?
Oh my. Don't you even know the name of your company's executives?
Wait, Kent? You mean the executive? How do you know about the executive?
Kent is an old friend of my father. It seems my father informed you about my husband working in the same company, and he wanted to greet you during the funeral.
Talking directly with the executive? Hey, set up another meeting with the executive. I don't know how this misunderstanding happened, but if I talk to the executive, I'm sure we can get this unjust transfer revoked.
I think it's useless.
Just do it. You know the contact, right? Call the executive right away.
I wanted to properly thank Kent, and making the call is fine, but despite Oliver relying on me, while overlooking his actions, I called Kent. Kent promised to come after I explained the situation to him. The next day, when Kent arrived, Oliver clearly exhibited a fawning attitude.
Kent, I apologize for not being able to meet you the other day. I've been looking forward to it.
Kent smiled wryly as he entered our home. When I offered coffee and sweets, Oliver immediately scolded me.
Hey, what's with these cheap sweets? Didn't you buy them from the store my mother recommended?
These are the sweets my father loved. I wanted Kent, who came to visit us, to feel nostalgic.
I don't care about that. Just do as my mother says, and you can't go wrong.
Kent intervened to soothe us.
He always loved these sweets. How nostalgic. I'll take one.
Saying so, Kent took a bite of the sweets and Oliver praised him excessively.
As expected of Kent. Even if you're served cheap sweets, you're so broad-minded that you won't be offended.
Feeling a bit fed up with the obvious flattery, Kent asked Oliver with a slightly irritated tone.
So, what's the matter you wanted to discuss?
Prompted by the question, Oliver leaned forward in his seat.
Regarding the recent personnel change, I thought there might be a misunderstanding. I don't think it's right to transfer a capable salesman like me to the shadows of the warehouse.
A misunderstanding?
I don't know what my wife told you, but please, don't take a housewife's playful words seriously. There should be no reason for me to be transferred to a windowless department.
Hearing this, Kent let out a deep sigh.
I haven't heard anything from her. The reason for this personnel change is entirely based on your own actions. What do you mean by my actions? We shouldn't put people in business who don't have the common sense to show up at their father-in-law's funerals. That's what we decided.
Upon hearing that, Oliver hastily began to justify himself.
That's not it. My mother wasn't feeling well, and I couldn't leave my parents' house no matter what.
Oliver's desperate excuse made Kent furrow his brows.
That's completely different from what I heard. I told you, don't take my wife's story seriously. No. What I heard was the conversation over the phone with you. On that day, you said on the phone that you couldn't come because there was a birthday celebration for your mother. Why was she...
Oliver suddenly turned pale.
When you and your wife were on the phone, I was also present. Thanks to her putting the phone on speaker, I was there during the call, even during the funeral service, where everyone heard your insults. Also the reason why you didn't attend your father-in-law's funeral. That's... I thought that when I was invited to your house this time, I could hear words of reflection from you, but as soon as you opened your mouth, it was just lies to protect yourself. It seems my decision to remove you from sales was the right one. Wait a minute.
Panicking, Oliver clung to me this time.
Emma, please, say something too. If I'm removed from sales now, I'll be off the promotion track. If I can't get a promotion and my salary decreases, you'll be in trouble too, won't you?
I coldly replied to him. Huh? I won't be in trouble at all.
Your life is at stake.
No, it's not. Whether you succeed or not, my life won't change at all. I have no intention of staying married to you any longer. In response to his plea, I handed him the divorce papers. I'm getting a divorce from you. Oliver laughed at my statement.
Divorce? How's a housewife like you going to live if you divorce me?
No need to worry. I've already decided on my next job and house. Kent kindly introduced me to a real estate agency that he's familiar with, and they also offered me a job.
What did you say?
Finally, my husband seemed to understand that I was serious. Kent supported me in this situation.
I won't allow any hesitation or reluctance about divorce at this point. To prevent the situation from getting worse, I recommend signing the documents right here. But Kent? Is there still something else? Fine.
Under Kent's pressure, Oliver signed the documents. He sat in a daze on the chair. After seeing off Kent, I left the house with the divorce papers and my belongings. Oliver reportedly left the house right after I did and returned to his parents' home. It was only natural since he couldn't handle household chores on his own. When his mother found out that he was demoted to warehouse duty, she was furious. She suggested that he quit the current job and seek employment at a bigger company. Driven by his mother's persuasion, Oliver submitted his resignation and started job hunting. However, getting a job at a major corporation turned out to be challenging. In the end, there wasn't a big company that would hire Oliver. He ended up unemployed, relying on his mother's pension for a living. Oliver's situation has left his mother feeling angry and disappointed. They seem to live a twisted life, each blaming the other, saying it's your fault. On the other hand, I have been thriving in the job Kent introduced me to the point where a promotion seems possible now. My father's former subordinate has become a good confidant, and I'm even contemplating getting remarried to him. I would cherish the connection my father established, and continue to do my best in the future. That's the pledge I made in my heart. On the day of my niece Emily's wedding, whom I had raised in place of her parents, my husband was in high spirits, getting ready since the morning. "You seem quite cheerful." When I spoke to him, my husband glanced at me.
"It's my lovely niece's wedding today. Oh yeah, you weren't invited, were you?"
To my husband's sarcastic remark, I remained silent.
"She doesn't like you, so don't interfere like that."
Should I attend the wedding today? When I quietly uttered those words, my husband's expression turned somewhat startled.
"Are you coming without an invitation? That's outrageous."
"What are you so worked up about?"
"Just forget it. Don't you dare come to that girl's wedding."
With those words, my husband left the house in a hurry. Upon witnessing that, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Watch closely. I will definitely send you to hell. Our revenge begins now. My name is Eileen, and I'm a 38-year-old working woman in a dual-income household. My husband's name is Wallace. He is 4 years older than me, and I met him through work. Wallace was a salesperson who frequented the company where I worked. Apparently, he found my appearance attractive, fell in love at first sight, and gave me his contact information. Feeling no harm, I started dating him. After a year of dating, Wallace proposed. The first person I shared the news with was my niece, Emily, who was 17 at the time. "Emily, he proposed to me. I think I'm getting married."
Really? Good for you, Mom.
"But if that happens, I'll be leaving the house, and I might not be able to take care of you as much, Emily."
Mom, I'm already 17. Don't worry about that and just be happy."
I embraced Emily, shedding tears. There's a reason why Emily calls me Mom. I've been raising her in place of my sister, who is 5 years older than me. My sister Camilla was flamboyant and uninhibited compared to my reclusive personality. Despite our similar appearances, our personalities were complete opposites. My sister immediately declared her intention to live with her boyfriend upon graduating from high school and left home, cutting off all contact. Even our parents, who run a business, had said they couldn't just abandon my sister. However, when I was 15 and my sister was 20, she returned home with a large belly.
"I got pregnant. I'll give birth and raise the child here."
Although our shocked parents asked for the name and the man involved, my sister could only say she didn't know. She had gotten pregnant by a man whose name and background were unknown. However, our parents couldn't abandon their daughter, so they allowed her to return home. Afterward, my sister gave birth. The newborn girl was named Emily. However, right after giving birth, my sister says something unexpected.
"I can't take care of Emily because I have to go to work."
Once again, both my parents and I were astonished.
"We'll take care of you for a while, so focus on childcare."
Despite my parents' announcement, my sister didn't change her opinion.
"I've already decided on a job."
"You can work at our company."
My sister rejected our father's proposal.
"I don't want to work for my parents' company. I want to work properly for Emily."
Once those words were spoken, even my parents couldn't oppose her. My sister continued speaking.
"So, Eileen, you should take care of Emily."
"Huh?"
"Emily can go to daycare, and Eileen can take care of her during the rest of the day." "Well then, that's that." In the end, unable to do anything, I ended up taking care of Emily. While my sister lived in the same house, she would leave in the early afternoon and return late at night, not taking care of Emily at all during that time. Therefore, with the help of my parents, I diligently raised Emily. I handled drop-offs and pickups to and from the daycare, often taking her to parks and reading her picture books. This way I managed parenting alongside my high school and college life. When Emily entered elementary school, I was a fourth-year university student. One day, on a holiday, I took her to a shopping mall.
When we passed by a store that offered matching outfits for parents and children, a salesperson approached us.
How about it? Since you're a young mother, matching outfits would suit you both.
I briefly hesitated on whether to explain that I was Emily's aunt. Then Emily spoke up.
Mom, let's buy matching clothes.
Huh? Emily, I'm your aunt, not your mom.
I've actually wanted to call you that for a long time. Is it not okay?
Certainly, joy welled up in my heart. For me, Emily had truly become like a daughter. From that moment, when it was just the two of us, Emily started calling me Mom. I cherished those times, participating in school events together and making her lunch. That's why Emily's happiness for my marriage meant the world to me. I continued with her, saying, next time, I'll bring my partner.
If it's someone chosen by Mom, they might become like a dad to me.
Maybe. On the day we brought Wallace to my parents' home, we welcomed him together with my parents, sister, and Emily. However, when Wallace entered the living room, he inexplicably widened his eyes and dropped the gift he brought onto the floor. Hey, Wallace, what's wrong? Wallace seemed to snap back to reality with a start.
I might have been a bit too nervous.
No need to be so nervous. From there, the conversation proceeded smoothly. During the conversation, my father said to Wallace,
Ideally, I'd like a male successor for our company. If Eileen and your child happen to be a boy, we'd love for him to take over. If that doesn't happen, you might have to inherit it.
My father had traditional views, emphasizing blood ties and a male heir. That's why I chose not to join my father's company and instead found employment in a different major corporation. On the way back, Wallace had a serious expression. Don't take what my dad said too seriously, okay?
Yeah.
Wallace seemed to be contemplating something. Later, Wallace and I rented a house near my parents' home and started living together. After expressing my desire to continue being involved with Emily, he accepted her presence.
Feel free to invite Emily over any time.
Thank you, Wallace. This way, Emily started visiting our home frequently. Wallace also seemed to have a kind and positive relationship with Emily. On the other hand, my relationship with Wallace had become subtly strained since our marriage. I had expressed multiple times that I wanted to actively pursue starting a family, but Wallace avoided physical contact and our intimate life came to a halt. Creating a child is not something one person can achieve alone. Time passed in this way. I was 38, and Emily had turned 22. By then, Emily was living on her own. We hadn't met for a while, and communication had become infrequent. She seemed to have a boyfriend from high school, and Emily had her own life. I felt both lonely and happy. Around that time, news of Emily's upcoming marriage reached me through my sister. It caught me off guard. I was honestly surprised.
We've decided to have a wedding, but I won't invite you.
Huh?
I'm telling you not to come. Wallace will be invited, but you don't need to come.
I was confused, not understanding the meaning. Emily is telling me not to come to her wedding, despite raising her as a mother figure? Why am I the only one not invited when Wallace is? When I conveyed this to my husband, he said,
Emily probably wants only her biological mother. Maybe she dislikes you?
There shouldn't be any reason for that.
Then why hasn't she contacted you directly? It seems like evidence of being disliked, doesn't it?
I was at a loss for words. It's true, I haven't heard from Emily, who lives alone in a distant place, for over 6 months. Has Emily truly come to dislike me?
I'll be there to see Emily in her bride's attire, so don't come to the wedding.
With emphasis, Wallace delivered this message. I couldn't sleep that day due to the shock. On a day approaching Emily's wedding, while working at the office, I received a call. To my surprise, the caller was Emily.
Mom, sorry for calling you at work.
Emily's voice on the phone sounded somewhat tense. What's wrong, Emily? What happened?
I want to meet and talk. I'm coming there. Can we meet after you finish work?
We made plans, and the call ended. Why bother calling the office when I have a cell phone? I wondered, but I was happy to meet Emily after such a long time. After finishing work, I hurried to the meeting place, and there stood a pale Emily. Emily!
Mom!
Emily, in tears, began to explain her situation.
Mom, please listen calmly.
Through our conversation, an unbelievable truth came to light. Time passed, and it was Emily's wedding day. In the morning, my husband was happily preparing. You seem to be in a good mood. When I said that, Wallace glanced at me.
It's my lovely niece's wedding today. Oh yeah, you weren't invited, were you?
I did not respond to Wallace's sarcastic comment.
She doesn't like you, so don't interfere like that.
Maybe I should attend the wedding today. When I said that quietly, my husband looked shocked.
Are you coming without an invitation? That's outrageous. That's outrageous.
What are you so worked up about?
Just forget it. Don't you dare come to that girl's wedding.
With that, Wallace left the house hastily. Inside, I felt a sense of satisfaction. Watch, I'll definitely send you to hell. Taking advantage of Wallace's departure, I changed into a dress and got ready. Opening the chapel doors with all my strength, there was the aisle. Wallace and Emily were just starting to walk down it. Several hours later, I was right in the venue for Emily's wedding.
Eileen, I told you not to come.
What's going on? Why are you walking down the aisle with Emily?
This is... Emily doesn't have a father, so I'm standing in for him.
At that moment, I decided to drop a bomb. That's not it, right? You're Emily's real father, aren't you? In the next moment, Emily forcefully pushed Wallace, who was standing next to her. Wallace tumbled spectacularly to the floor. Then my sister's voice echoed.
Hey, Emily, what are you doing? And Eileen, what's your intention coming here without an invitation? Don't mess up the ceremony.
The wedding venue became chaotic. Even our parents were looking at us with a mix of surprise and anger. Then Emily sharply shouted,
Everyone, please listen to me.
The venue fell silent as if a spell was cast.
Please calm down. This was discussed in advance between me, my aunt, or rather, my mom and me. We have the groom's permission as well.
The groom approached Emily, who was wearing a wedding dress, and wrapped his arms around her shoulders. He nodded at both Emily and me. At that moment, our father walked towards us with a pale face.
Wait a moment. Eileen mentioned earlier that Wallace is Emily's biological father. What does that mean? I don't understand.
Emily responded to this.
First, listen to this.
I immediately played the voice recorder at high volume.
Well, I was surprised at first. I never thought my fiancé's sister was my ex.
I was surprised too. I really liked you back then. That's why when I got pregnant, I didn't want to cause any trouble, so I disappeared.
Hey, am I the only one you liked back then?
Even now, of course I still like you. I can't imagine being with anyone else but you, Wallace.
This was an ugly conversation between my husband and sister. Wallace and my sister's faces turned pale simultaneously. The recorded conversation continued.
Looking forward to Emily's wedding.
Yes, let's send her off with her real parents.
Leave the troublemaker at home.
Even though she's a troublemaker, you can't get a divorce, right? Our relationship and the fact that you're Emily's father can't be revealed.
Yeah, and I have to inherit your father's company. That's why I didn't want to have kids with her. In the future, I'll be the president.
If that happens, let's kick out Eileen and live happily together.
Saying this, the two of them laughed crudely. I stopped the playback and spoke up. As you just heard, Emily's father is my husband, who is also the uncle of the bride. They are still in a relationship. They even made plans to take over the company. Upon hearing this, all the participants turned pale. Then Emily spoke up.
These two fabricated lies about us disliking each other just so they could have the wedding to themselves. They even made me delete my contacts from my phone.
The revelation came to light on the day I reunited with Emily. My sister had been feeding Emily lies, claiming that I considered her a nuisance, and that's why we couldn't contact each other. Emily initially believed this manipulation. However, one day Emily overheard my sister talking to Wallace on the phone. Understanding the true nature of their relationship from the conversation, Emily contacted my company and came to meet me. Upon investigating them later, I found that their entire conversation had been recorded. Emily pointed at my sister and said,
"You, pretending to be a mother figure, but the one who raised me is none other than Eileen here. I've never considered you my mother, and this man could never be a father." "Emily!"
Just as my sister tried to approach Emily, my mother slapped her.
You, neglecting your duties as a mother, burdening Eileen with everything and betraying her? You're a disgrace.
Seeing that, I too grabbed a stunned Wallace by the collar. Are you prepared as well? We're getting a divorce. You'll be paying hefty alimony.
Huh? Divorce? What about the plan for me to become the president?
This time my father shouted.
There's no way I'm letting the likes of you inherit it. Cut the nonsense.
The attendees stared at my sister and Wallace with disdain. Prepare yourselves, because I'm sending both of you packing to hell. With those words, I kicked my sister and Wallace out. After the silence, Emily apologized to the attendees.
"I planned this because I couldn't forgive what my parents did, and I wanted to chastise them in front of everyone. I'm sorry for showing you something unsightly. However, I still want you to participate in the ceremony."
The attendees applauded Emily's decision. That's how I ended up sitting in the mother's seat where my sister had been. The ceremony resumed, and Emily read a letter to her mother, addressed to me. I cried so much that one tissue wasn't enough. Later, the divorce between Wallace and me was finalized. I successfully claimed alimony from both my sister and Wallace. My parents disowned my sister and kicked her out of the family home. I also managed to successfully get rid of Wallace. Emily, on the other hand, severed ties with both my sister and Wallace. The two of them apparently still did not part ways and began living together in a small apartment. However, their savings had long run out, and their plan for Wallace to become president had failed. They apparently have days filled with constant fighting. Two despicable people. I think they should just get along as best they can. As for me, on the other hand, after the divorce, I actually met someone and remarried right away. My new spouse has a wonderful personality and an impressive background. My father really likes him and wants him to inherit the company. What's more, to my delight, I found out about my pregnancy right after getting married. Actually, Emily was also pregnant around the same time, and we will give birth within a month of each other. Now we are mother and daughter, but we have also become like mom friends, and I see Emily frequently. From now on, I want to cherish the happiness I've gained and live positively.
Stop going on business trips. Right now.
What? What are you talking about? If I did that, it would inconvenience a lot of people.
So? It's okay to inconvenience me? You think dumping all the housework on me is fine?
I never said that. Plus, you barely do any housework when I'm away.
Shut up! How many times do I have to tell you not to talk back to me?
Anyway, I have to go on these trips. It would cause problems at work if I didn't.
If that's the case, then we're getting a divorce.
Again, with this talk. He hasn't changed at all. I'm Miranda, a 30-year-old company employee. I met my husband, Justin, at work. He was the representative for one of our clients. Our relationship started after he invited me to dinner following a meeting. After 5 years of dating, we got married. I learned halfway through our relationship that he was the only son of a company president. It didn't really matter to me, but it seemed important to him. He said most women change their attitude when they learn he's the president's son, often asking for more. But I didn't change how I acted, which made him think I was the right person for him. Him being the president's son actually complicated things for me. Since he was destined to be the next president, I had to quit my job and work at his company to better understand the business. It was hard to leave the job I had for 8 years, but I decided to join my husband's company and worked hard to learn everything. I didn't want to be seen as incompetent, especially as the future president's wife. So, I took on work proactively, even doing overtime. This made me popular with my superiors and colleagues, and I started to enjoy my work more. However, Justin didn't seem too happy about it. I'm home.
Welcome back. Working late again. Huh.
Yeah, it was another busy day. We're in different departments, but I'll have to learn all parts of the business eventually. We might end up working together at some point.
Haven't you been working overtime a bit too much?
Yeah, but everyone's swamped. I can't just leave early.
You really don't understand, do you?
What do you mean?
You'll be taken for granted.
By whom?
By the people at the company.
I was confused. How does working overtime together lead to being taken for granted?
You're going to be the president's wife. It looks bad for someone like you to be doing grunt work with everyone else.
Why? I think it's a good thing.
It's about maintaining your dignity.
I don't see your point.
Come on, you should understand that.
Why are you getting so upset?
I'm not upset. Just come home earlier. I'm starving. Make dinner.
He slammed the door and went to his room. I couldn't figure out why he was so angry. The better I did at work, the colder he became.
Why are you working so hard?
As the future president's wife, I need to work extra hard to learn the job.
You don't need to do all that. Just being the president's wife is enough.
I disagree. Then, why did your dad tell me to work for his company?
That's just a front for the other employees. Neither of us need to work that hard. Your main job should be taking care of the house.
I was annoyed by his words. I do prioritize work, but I don't neglect our home. I take care of all the cleaning and cooking. Meanwhile, he gets home earlier than me and does nothing. He leaves his shoes and trash everywhere, like a spoiled child. You can tell how he was raised. It's exhausting to handle all the housework after a long day at work, and our arguments kept increasing.
Why can't you just do what you're told? Stop working overtime and come home earlier.
Everyone's working hard. I can't just slack off.
Is your department full of people who can't do their jobs? Maybe they're intentionally slow to get more overtime pay.
What? That's ridiculous. Everyone's working diligently.
Whose side are you on? Mine or coworkers?
It's not about taking sides. You're saying things that aren't true, and I'm just setting the record straight.
If you dislike me that much, let's get a divorce.
Don't talk about divorce so lightly.
You'd be in trouble if I divorced you. But remember, you're the one who made me angry.
He said that, and again, retreated to his room. It was the first time he mentioned divorce, so I was taken aback and didn't respond well. Eventually, the fight didn't lead to divorce, thanks to the intervention of my in-laws. But I was genuinely worried about whether I could continue being married to such a hysterical man. My patience was nearly at its limit. After a busy period at work, I had fewer overtime hours, and my husband was quieter. But then, as I started traveling more for business due to a new project, I had to be away from home for 3 to 4 days a month, sometimes even a week. During these times, he was home alone, and he began to complain about my trips.
Why do you have to go on so many business trips?
I can't help it. It's part of my job.
You're just accompanying others, right? Smiling and nodding beside them. Why do you need to go?
What are you talking about? I'm the one in charge, and I'm the one dealing directly with the clients. I'm doing a lot of work and coordinating meetings.
Don't lie. You've been at the company for less than a year. How could someone like you be given such important tasks?
He wouldn't listen to anything I said and kept complaining about my unnecessary trips.
You just want to avoid housework. That's why you volunteer to go, right?
His accusations were too much. It was just nitpicking. Think whatever you want. I was tired of fighting head on, so I decided to let it slide. But even that seemed to irritate him, and he confronted me again.
You're mocking me, aren't you?
I'm not.
Yes, you are. Otherwise, you wouldn't act or speak like that.
Oh my God. This is so annoying. Let's just end this conversation.
Annoying? What do you mean, annoying? Don't mess with me. Annoying to talk to your own husband? Don't get too cocky. You wouldn't become a president's wife if you hadn't married me. Whether your life is a success or a failure depends on me.
His outrageous statements were unbelievable. Could such a person really become the next president?
Stop going on business trips right now.
What are you talking about? If I did that, it would inconvenience a lot of people.
So, it's okay to inconvenience me? You think dumping all the housework on me is fine?
I didn't say that. Besides, you don't do any housework while I'm away. I always end up doing everything when I get back.
Shut up. How many times do I have to tell you not to talk back to me?
Anyway, I have to go on these trips. It would cause problems at work if I didn't.
If that's the case, then we're getting a divorce.
Again with this talk. He hasn't changed at all. In the end, we fought, and I went on a 3-day business trip the next day. When I returned home, I expected the house to be a mess, and to receive an earful from him. I felt depressed as I unlocked the door. But when I entered, the house was as clean as when I had left. I thought my husband had cleaned it. Maybe he had finally listened to me. But my happiness was short-lived. I found a piece of paper and a note on the living room table. A divorce paper. And the note had a message from him.
This is your fault. I'm serious about divorcing. I've gone back to my parents' house. If you don't want a divorce, come and apologize.
What is this? He left divorce papers and just left. And his part was already filled out. Perfect! I was more delighted than I had been in recent times. I immediately filled out my part and submitted it to the office. With my parents' help, I moved my belongings back to my home. I have successfully left the house. Justin called a few times. He was probably impatient because I hadn't come to his parents' house yet. I ignored his calls and went to the office. I then went to see the president, my father-in-law, and afterwards, we went to his house together.
You finally showed up. Why are you ignoring my calls? What's your problem?
Exactly. How dare you act like this? As a daughter-in-law. Don't get too full of yourself.
Hey. What kind of way is that to talk? Dad? Why are you here?
Why are you with her?
They hadn't realized. My father-in-law, Nate, was behind me and had been rude to me.
It seems what Miranda said was true. Dad? I don't know what she told you, but she never listens to me. Right? You know it too, Dad. She's slow at work, volunteers for unnecessary business trips just to avoid housework, and does whatever she wants. Fire her from the company. Make her focus on housework at home.
His self-centered words were unbelievable. I decided to stay quiet and let Nate handle it.
Justin, you're really hopeless. Miranda has earned tremendous trust from her colleagues in the same department. She's very capable. That's why she's trusted with important business trips. But, and you? What about you? Barely working, always slacking off, harassing female employees, asking them out, causing trouble. Moreover, you leave work right at quitting time and never do overtime. I've received complaints about you, not only from your department, but from others as well. I can't let you continue to damage the company's reputation just because you're my son. It's not Miranda who should be fired. It's you. What?
Wait, what are you doing? That's too harsh. Oh, my poor Justin.
Be quiet. It's because you always coddle him that he's become so entitled. I know I'm partly to blame too. I tried to discipline him whenever necessary, but every time I did, you undid it by buying him games, clothes, whatever he wanted. That's why my lectures never sank in. If you continue to spoil him like this, you'll have to leave this house too.
That would be a problem.
Dad, what am I supposed to do if I'm fired? I can't do housework, and being a stay-at-home husband would be embarrassing. Stay-at-home husband? What are you talking about? What? Miranda has already filed the divorce papers you presented to her. What? Hey, Miranda, why did you do something like that on your own?
Oh, your note said you were serious about wanting a divorce. I felt the same way, so I filed the papers with mutual consent.
You're kidding. The one who's been joking is you. Do you have any idea how much unreasonable treatment she has endured from you? Miranda, I'm truly sorry for my foolish son.
No, Nate, it's not your fault.
The house you and Justin were living in is in my name. I'll cancel it right away. What? What am I supposed to do? I've arranged a good job for you through an acquaintance. You can go there. It's a live-in position. Really? Dad, you do care about me.
That's great, Justin.
So, what kind of job is it? It's farm work in the countryside of Texas. They're short of men, so you'll be valuable there. What? No, you're kidding. I'm a man of my word. You're leaving tomorrow. I've even booked your flight ticket. No, I don't want to go there. Then, I'll have no choice but to disown you. Wait, would you really do that to your only son? If you don't like it, go work on the farm. Don't come back until you've changed your attitude. But, Mom, say something. Help me out here.
His mother, having just been warned by her husband not to coddle her son any longer, averted her eyes, unable to offer help. In the end, my ex-husband was sent off to rural Texas the next day. The place apparently doesn't even have Wi-Fi. He's now stuck in a land with only large insects and elderly folks doing farm work from dawn to dusk. Having always relied on money and modern gadgets and chased after women, this situation must be quite tough for him. It's a true case of just deserts. As for me, I continued with my current job, working hard. I recently got a promotion and now earn more than I did at my previous job. I plan to keep working diligently, building my career and skills.